hoping that from an aviation perspective, the good will be done in the sense that airlines and airports and aircraft and personnel will be cleared to operate safely and take people to and from these countries. Our thoughts go out to all the individuals that are currently facing lockdowns or shelter in place in Mexico. Currently, what we know is that the airspace closures are affecting mostly Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, Jalisco. If you look at some of the data from Flight Radar 24 today, what we're seeing is that essentially most of the air traffic, at least from what I've seen, to Puerto Vallarta starting around 8 a.m. Sunday, the 22nd of February local time. A lot of traffic coming from Canada and from the northern parts of the United States already under some sort of pressure from the northeast storms. And if you look at some of those traffic patterns, most of those flights diverted, including all Canadian ones to either US ports or back to their bases in Canada. Same for all flights going from the East Coast and the West Coast and the Midwest to Puerto Vallarta. I imagine that the same is taking place for Guadalajara as well. There are resources that have been provided for customers or people that are stranded in any parts of Mexico, at least if you're from the US side, but most notably if you're from Canada or if you're from other parts of the world that are in affected tourism areas in Mexico, where there are either going to be civil unrest periods or there are going to be accesses to basic needs, whether it's medication, transportation, food, lodging, shelter, electricity. It's all kind of up for grabs. So the best thing to do is just rely on your local resources for whatever you can do and maintain whatever contact you can with people that are here. From an aviation perspective, what we do know is that the aerospace closures will probably take place for the next 48 hours, I believe. And at this time, the next thing that we know will take place is basically until the security cabinet of Jalisco basically says that flights and airports will operate under normal circumstances. Essentially, all flights will be canceled. And so there are impressions and there are discussions that Puerto Vallarta could be a neutral zone for the cartels. We don't know if that is true or not. As always, for any sort of civil unrest or disobedience, it's also important to know what news sources are the reliable ones and which ones are used to promote propaganda, which again can be very dangerous in these times. Again, not just from an aviation perspective, but also from a local and a global perspective. The Grupo Aeropuerto del Pacífico, which runs Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara, also is seemingly unaware of what is going on. I have seen footage and video circulating of passengers on the tarmac in Puerto Vallarta. There's been gunshots in Guadalajara. A couple friend of mine who live in Puerto Vallarta part of the year from Chicago have had their excursions live interrupted on a Sunday morning. Basically, they were going from their condo to a whale watching. And then reportedly, a man came up to their car with a gun and said, "Get out of the car," and forced them out. Then threw something in the car. It exploded. And basically from there, that kind of was an indication as early as 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning that the rioting was going to begin. And so my friends, they were a couple, they were actually separated from each other for about 8 hours. One of them was actually sheltering in an orphanage. Thankfully, they're safe. However, again, the next 24 to 48 hours will be crucial for a large swath of people in Mexico. Cartels are also making blockades difficult by taking vehicles, setting them ablaze, taking out major arterial roads and highways. But the images that are coming out of homes and businesses are also showing that, like, martial law has been announced in Jalisco, which could allow the government to put a stop to the continued violence and destruction. But again, we're hoping and praying for everyone that is there currently. More than anything, I think that whether you stand on one side or the other, people of Mexico deserve better. The Mexican citizens deserve better. The tourists And the people that keep the tourism infrastructure in Mexico alive deserve better than this. And of course, as always, please just make sure that you're taking care of each other and you are also taking care of yourselves. Yeah, so I think more interesting topics, I can actually go into the data that I was looking at this morning. Given the fact that it is a freezing morning in Chicago here, it's very noteworthy that we're just kind of looking at some of these things. So looking at the data from yesterday, basically earlier flights on Flight Radar 24 showing that yesterday morning, essentially, if we look really at the first and only flights that actually made it in, the looks of it is an Aeromexico flight from Mexico City made it in, an American Airlines flight from Dallas made it in, and then a couple of departures for, let's see, Frontier to Atlanta took place, Viva to Mexico City, Aeromexico to Mexico City. Basically, it looked like up until around noon, flights were able to get out. United was able to get out, but then basically starting in the afternoon, that's when the cancellations started taking place. Sun Country, Volaris, Viva, American, Delta, WestJet, Flair, Alaska, Southwest, Porter, WestJet. I think I may have mentioned Air Canada. Let's see. Those are the majors. Pretty much everything is all canceled up until tomorrow. Looking at Guadalajara, just to take a zoom out, Guadalajara is pretty much also in that same category. Looking at Mexico City or Monterrey, which are the other busy airports in the country of Mexico. It looks like Mexico City Airport right now has estimated flights preparing to take off. Granted, it's a slot restricted airport, so there are restrictions around how many movements it has per hour. But I'm not seeing that any of the morning departures. Actually, I take that back. It looks like a lot of the 6 a.m. banks made it out of Mexico City, no problem. There are a few cancellations like New York. That makes sense. That's probably weather related. It looks like though the 8 o'clock, it's currently 7:24 a.m. Chicago time, which means it's around the same in Mexico. For Mexico City, it looks like flights are moving. ANA flight to Tokyo is en route because 8 a.m. bank looks like it's going to be good to go. Let's look at Monterrey. It also looks pretty good, I think. So for the time being, it looks like just Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta are the ones that are going to be closed. Might look at San Jose del Cabo también, just to see si posiblemente hay cancelaciones, pero dice que todo está estimado. Aeromexico flight, it's in Mex, took off at 6:30. I think the local time there is 6:25 a.m. So the next one is to Monterrey at 8:30. So I guess Baja California is good to go. But besides that, yes, this is quite the issue. There's also, the challenge of international civil aero organization requirements. If security requirements cannot be adhered to, then basically US airlines and Canadian airlines, international airlines for that matter, can't effectively bring their aircraft, their crews, any of it into these countries. They're basically not going to be secure. They're not going to be clear. Essentially, it's kind of a lawlessness. One other airport I haven't looked at is Cancun to see if there's any Cancun affected. Doesn't seem to also be. Yep, Cancun looks like it's okay for the time being. Yep. Guadalajara, there are reports now saying that it has partially reopened. That's what I'm seeing now, although there's still mostly cancellations. Yeah, how much else I can say at this time? I'm wearing my Mexicana de Aviación t-shirt. For goodness. Yeah. Thinking of all of you right now, thinking of all the people that are sheltering in place. You will get through this. There's another side to it. Again, take care of each other. If you are stranded in Mexico and you are a U.S. citizen, just count on what help you can get from the consulates or from the embassies. Find other Americans that are there, especially if they're Americans from your various cities, to connect with. Once again, thinking of all of you and hoping that from an aviation perspective, the good will be done in the sense that airlines and airports and aircraft and personnel will be cleared to operate safely and take people to and from these countries, that also people will be able to connect with their loved ones, check in, be safe, report back, I guess, in the next 18 to 24 hours, I guess. Thanks for coming on this live, very quick episode reporting on the situation in Mexico as of 7:30 a.m. Chicago time on February 23rd, 2026. So my nephew's birthday.